If you want to be successful on Kickstarter this year, don't follow the same outdated Kickstarter tips that experts are talking about. That's because the rules of how to be successful on Kickstarter have completely changed. I know because for the past 10 years, my team and I at LaunchBoom have helped over 1,000 creators launch their products on Kickstarter and Indiegogo, raising over $125 million. And what I'm seeing today is that creators who are going against these expert tips are finding way more success. More specifically, there are 5 outdated tips that you need to avoid for your next Kickstarter launch. So whether this will be your first Kickstarter campaign or your 50th, I bet you'll learn something that will make your next Kickstarter way more successful. And I really want to get into these 5 outdated tips, but before I do, I have to tell you a quick story about one of my first failures. All right, so back in 2016, I was working with an awesome creator named Bubba Albrecht, who's the founder of Giver. We were launching his first product on Kickstarter called the 4-Season Gloves. And at this time, the expert tip that everyone was talking about was to build an email list before you launch. So that's what we did. We spent some money on Facebook ads, we sent traffic to a landing page, and we collected email addresses. For Bubba, we collected a lot of email addresses, 8,871 to be exact. And we spent a good amount of money on ads too, about $10,000. And when we launched, we sent an email to this list and boom, over $50,000 raised in one day. And by the end of the campaign, $224,000 were raised. So clearly this strategy worked, right? Well, not really. Looking back on it, we got a little lucky. You see, after this launch, we had a few more where we followed the same exact strategy. We spent money on ads, built up an email list, launched, sent an email to that list, but there was no boom. Instead, there were crickets. Only a fraction of the email list backed the campaign, which meant the creators lost thousands of dollars on ad spend. And that brings us to our first outdated tip to stop doing: stop building an email list. Having those painful experiences of failure showed me that just building an email list wasn't enough. You see, it's really easy for someone to give you their email and say, yeah, I'll totally back your project when you launch. But when you actually do launch your Kickstarter, they're nowhere to be found. So I asked myself, how could we know that someone was committed to buying the product before we actually launched? Well, I found out that answer once I discovered the $1 reservation funnel strategy. It was really similar to the outdated tip to just build an email list, but had one extra and very, very important step. After someone gave us their email address, we'd present an offer to reserve the best deal when we launched in exchange for a $1 deposit. So people would put down a $1 deposit in the pre-launch to get something special like a discount or an add-on when we actually launch. The whole idea here is that it's way harder for someone to pull out their credit card, even if it's for $1, than for them to just give their email address. So by adding this simple step, we were able to separate the people that were just kind of interested from the people that were really committed to buying. And I mean a lot more committed. We found that those that put down a $1 deposit are 30 times more likely to back the campaign on average than someone that just gave their email address. As you can imagine, this worked extremely well in building a community of real buyers prior to the launch. For example, we helped Jose raise over $1.3 million for his product Author Clock on Kickstarter using this $1 reservation strategy. And before we pressed the launch button, we had 2,363 people on our reservation list who had given us a $1 deposit. And when we launched, Author Clock did $224,000 in one day. More importantly, Jose got a 5 times return on his investment into ads because the $1 reservation strategy showed him who was actually committed to buying. And this led Jose to have a $1 million campaign, which is the perfect segue into the second outdated tip: stop trying to raise $1 million. You might be surprised at how many first-time creators come to me and say they have to raise $1 million. And when I ask why, the answer is usually something like, well, I saw this other campaign raise over $1 million and my product is so much better than theirs. That is not a good reason. The truth is, there are other much more important goals to focus on first that may lead to a $1 million campaign. For example, Jose wasn't trying to raise $1 million. He was trying to validate demand by acquiring customers profitably. Jose knew that this goal was the most important because if he could do it, it would benefit him not only for his Kickstarter, but for the rest of his company's existence. As you already know from the tip before this, Jose was able to get a 5 times return on his ad spend, and that's only because he focused on acquiring customers profitably first. The other reason why trying to raise $1 million is an outdated tip is because it can lead to all sorts of huge problems that first-time creators don't typically yet understand. For example, which of these 3 campaigns was the most successful? Coolest Cooler, who raised $13 million, Fort, who raised $3.1 million, or Zbeck, who raised $53,000? Well, most would choose Cool is Cooler, right? I mean, it raised $13 million. But what if I told you that today, Cool is Cooler makes zero, Fort makes zero, and Zbeck makes over $10 million a year? You'd probably change your answer, right? The point is this, raising $1 million does not equal long-term business success. In fact, it's usually the creators who are dead set on raising $1 million that end up failing not long after their campaign finishes. Because raising that much money as a first-time creator can easily lead to all sorts of huge manufacturing issues, which is exactly what happened to the founders of Cool is Cooler, Fort, and many other big $1 million successes. Now, Alex at Zbeck viewed his Kickstarter launch as one step in creating a profitable, long-lasting business, and he focused on the stuff that mattered, like validating market demand, acquiring customers profitably, and manufacturing and delivering on time. Raising $53,000 was enough for him to do these three things, and he leveraged that initial success to then build a thriving 8-figure business. Alex also did not follow the next tip, which helped him even more. There's a big myth that's been spread amongst the Kickstarter community that even I thought was true for far too long. It's the myth that you can just figure out your final manufacturing costs after your campaign. I mean, since you only need a prototype to launch, why not just focus on getting your initial customers first, and then you can understand all the cost stuff later? Well, the thing is that this is incredibly risky, because if you launch without understanding the exact cost to produce your product, you could easily get into a situation where the costs are much higher than what you estimated, and you lose a ton of money. That's exactly what happened to the high-profile failures of the Cool is Cooler and Fort. Instead, what you want to do is understand your manufacturing costs before you launch. This means not just producing an initial prototype, but getting the final production sample made so that you can 1, know the product is feasible to make, and 2, know the exact cost of producing one unit. Knowing the cost before you launch allows you to do the math and understand how much you actually need to make in order to be profitable. This will help you with important things like setting your campaign goal, choosing how much you need to invest in marketing, and knowing your break-even number. Yes, it may take more time and money to figure out these costs before you launch, but in the long run, it's definitely worth it. Hey, real quick, if you want to go even deeper into everything I'm talking about, you should check out my book, Crowdfunded. It's the best-selling book on crowdfunding in the world with 4.7 out of 5 stars from 255 reviews, and I just published the new edition in August of 2023 where the CEO of Kickstarter and Indiegogo endorsed it. Anyways, you can pick it up on Kindle, print, or audiobook that I recorded myself. Link to check it out is in the corner of this video or in the description below. All right, back to outdated tip number 4, stop setting a launch date. Come here really quick. I'm going to reveal to you the secret of the best time to launch your product. Ready? The best time to launch your product is when you are ready to launch your product. Wah, wah. No, but seriously, so many failed campaigns happen because they set a launch date months in advance and start promoting that date. But what if they're not ready to launch when the date comes around? Well, most of them just launch their campaign anyway because that's the date they promoted, and they end up failing. So how do you know if you are ready to launch? Well, besides having all the stuff done like your Kickstarter page and video, the most important thing is to have a big enough reservation list. You see, the reservation list will tell you when you can launch. For example, Audrey from Kubelet didn't use the reservation funnel strategy for her first launch, so she had no idea when she was actually ready to launch. She set a launch date, launched, and failed. Then she worked with my team at LaunchBoom, used the reservation funnel strategy, and got nearly $1,001 reservation deposits. Now, we know that usually around 30% of people who give us a $1 deposit will buy when the campaign launches. So because Audrey had 1,000 people on her reservation list, we predicted that 30% of them, or 300 people, would buy when the campaign launched. With a price point of around $125, we thought that she'd make around $37,500, which would put her well past her goal. So she was clearly ready to launch, and when she launched, she actually raised over $48,000 in the first day. So the moral of the story is this: do not set a launch date until you know you are ready to launch, and know you're ready to launch by building a reservation list during the pre-launch to predict your day one sales. All right, I have one last outdated tip for you. Stop telling your story. Too many creators think their story is way more important than it is. The truth is, your story is not going to be the main reason why someone buys your product. Instead, understanding your customer story and how your product fits into it will be the main reason. For example, we worked with Tyler Bushnell to launch the Polycade Sente on Kickstarter and raised over $1.6 million. Now, Tyler is the son of Nolan Bushnell, the creator of Atari, the company behind video games like Pong, Space Invaders, and Pac-Man. That's a pretty powerful story, wouldn't you say? Especially for someone that's launching a modular arcade machine. Well, you want to know where Tyler mentioned this story on his Kickstarter page? At the top? No. In the middle? No. All the way down here at the bottom of the page, he put this little section about his dad and the story. Why? Because Tyler understood that focusing on his product was way more important than focusing on his story. At the end of the day, people were only going to buy his product if they thought it was going to solve their needs. They needed to envision themselves using it, which is only possible if Tyler focused on the main features and benefits of the product. Now, I want to be very clear that I'm not saying that your story is not important. It's just not the most important thing when it comes to marketing your Kickstarter. Here's another way to think about it. If your Kickstarter campaign were, let's say, an ice cream sundae, the ice cream, chocolate sauce, and whipped cream would all be the info about your product. Now, the cherry on top, that be your story. Still a part of the ice cream sundae, but a very small part. All right, now you know the 5 outdated Kickstarter tips the most successful creators have stopped following. I hope you use the tips to finally bring your product idea to life this year. Also, if you're serious about launching your product and you want some help, my team and I would love to chat. Whether you're launching a tech product, a board game, or a new boutique hotel, we can help you. And you can join a community of over 1,600 other creators who are launching their products too. Just click the link on this video or in the description below, fill out a few questions, and I'll get you connected to the right expert on my team. Oh, and really quick, these tips are super valuable, but you probably feel a little lost in terms of what you should do next. Well, I also made a video where I break down the 7 key milestones you must complete to have a successful Kickstarter launch this year. This is an in-depth, step-by-step guide, and you can watch it right on over here. So go ahead, click on it, and I'll see you over there.